Christmas in the United States doesn't begin with silence. It begins with noise. It begins before Thanksgiving dishes are cleared, before the year has even finished unfolding. One day the calendar still says fall, and the next day the world around me is already telling me how I'm supposed to feel. Lights appear on houses that were dark yesterday. Store aisles shift color overnight. Music I didn't ask for begins following me from parking lots into grocery stores. It's cheerful. It's bright. It's relentless. And every year, I feel the same quiet confusion settle in my chest. I enjoy parts of it. I really do. I like the warmth, the familiarity, the shared sense that something special is supposed to be happening. I like seeing neighborhoods glow after dark. I like how people seem softer, at least on the surface. But there's always a moment, sometimes early, sometimes late, when I realize I'm participating in something that feels strangely hollow, like I'm celebrating around the center instead of standing inside it. I don't remember Christmas always feeling this way. There was a time when it felt heavier, slower, more intentional. Not heavy in a burdensome sense, but weighty, as if the day itself carried meaning that demanded attention. The story of Christ's birth wasn't just background noise. It was the reason everything else existed. The singing wasn't performance. The quiet wasn't awkward. Even the joy felt anchored to something older than tradition. Now, living in modern America, Christmas feels more like a project than a proclamation. Something to organize, schedule, optimize, and survive. We count down to it like a finish line, then rush through it as if we're afraid to stop and look too closely. I don't think anyone decided to change Christmas. I think it changed the way so many things do here, gradually, efficiently, without malice. Christmas didn't move from worship to rejection. It moved from worship to entertainment. And entertainment doesn't demand reverence. It demands attention. Constant, shallow attention. Fun is safe. Fun doesn't confront you. Fun doesn't ask you who you are or why you're here. Fun doesn't expose the parts of you that need healing. It just keeps you occupied long enough to forget they exist. That's what unsettles me. Because the original Christmas story was never safe. A teenage girl, terrified, told her life would never be ordinary again. A man choosing obedience over reputation. A child born into vulnerability, instability, danger. A ruler so threatened by the implications of that birth that he responded with violence. Angels didn't appear to create ambience. They appeared because something disruptive had entered the world. Something holy crossed into human history, and it wasn't subtle. That story doesn't exist to make us comfortable. It exists to undo us. And undoing is not something American culture excels at. We prefer improvement, enhancement, upgrades. We like things that fit neatly into our lives without rearranging them. So we soften the story. We decorate it. We turn it into something familiar enough that it no longer asks anything of us. The manger becomes sentimental. The miracle becomes seasonal. The birth becomes a symbol instead of a turning point. The danger fades. The cost disappears. In the United States, Christmas is often framed as whatever you want to be. That phrase sounds inclusive, even generous. But it quietly removes the center. When Christmas becomes whatever I want, it no longer shapes me. I shape it, and what I usually shape it into is something manageable, something pleasant, something that fits between obligations. I see this everywhere, in how quickly we rush through moments meant to be sacred, in how silence makes people uncomfortable, in how even churches feel pressure to keep things upbeat, brief, and non-threatening. Reverence feels risky in a culture addicted to stimulation. Stillness feels inefficient. But the birth of Christ does not cooperate with efficiency. It happens slowly, in obscurity, without applause, without comfort, without control. It happened on the margins, not at the center of power. And that alone should unsettle us, because it challenges the way we instinctively measure importance. What troubles me most is that none of this feels like open hostility to faith. It feels friendly, cheerful, neutral. Christmas wasn't attacked. It was absorbed, and absorption is often more effective than opposition. The more entertaining Christmas becomes, the more exhausted people seem when it ends. I notice it every year. The build-up is enormous. Expectations pile up, Then the day passes, and there's a strange emotional drop-off. The gifts are opened, the meals are finished, the photos are posted, and beneath the satisfaction, there's often a quiet emptiness that no one really talks about. It's as if we celebrated something without ever touching it. I feel it in myself. That moment when the noise fades and I realize something feels unfinished. Like I participated fully and still missed something essential. The fun wasn't wrong. It just wasn't enough. The birth of Christ was never meant to be light. It was meant to be luminous. It was meant to change how people understood power, worth, suffering, and hope. It was meant to declare that God does not remain distant, that he steps into fragility willingly, that humility is not weakness, that love is costly. That kind of story demands attention. But attention costs us something here. It costs time. It costs silence. It costs choosing depth over distraction. And modern Christmas rarely makes space for that cost. We are trained to fill every gap, to keep moving, to keep buying, to keep ourselves entertained enough that we never have to sit with discomfort. Yet the Christmas story is filled with discomfort, fear, uncertainty, risk, disruption, obedience without explanation, faith without guarantees. It doesn't offer a tidy message. It offers a beginning that leads somewhere costly. I've caught myself wanting Christmas to comfort me without changing me, to inspire me without confronting me, to reassure me without demanding anything in return. But the birth of Christ doesn't offer that kind of comfort. It offers hope. And hope, real hope, is disruptive. Hope implies that something is wrong, that the world is not as it should be, that I am not complete as I am. And that acknowledgement alone is something we often resist. In American culture, we prefer optimism to hope. Optimism assumes things will work out. Hope insists that redemption is necessary. Optimism is passive. Hope requires trust. The more I think about it, the more I realize Christmas hasn't lost its meaning. We just layered so much noise over it that the meaning struggles to breathe. Beneath the lights and the laughter, the story is still there, waiting, pressing, asking to be noticed. That's why people feel more emotional during the holidays, not less. That's why memories surface. Loss feels sharper. Longings feel louder. The season exposes things. It reveals what we've been avoiding all year. And we respond by adding more noise. We schedule more events. Buy more things. Fill more time. Anything to keep from sitting with the quiet truth that the story of Christmas is not just about joy, but about need, about rescue, about a world that cannot fix itself. I don't think Christmas was meant to be reduced to a mood. It was meant to be a moment, a declaration, a reminder that history is not random, and neither are we, that God entered time, not as a conqueror, but as a child. That power looks different than we expect. That love moves downward before it moves outward. When we disconnect the birth from everything that follows, we turn it into something harmless. But the birth was never harmless. It pointed forward, to a life that would challenge religious systems, to teachings that would unsettle the comfortable, to a death that would expose injustice, to a resurrection that would demand a response. Christmas was the opening line of a story that changes everything. And that's why reducing it to fun feels insufficient. Because fun doesn't prepare you for transformation. Fun passes. Transformation lingers. I don't think joy and reverence are opposites. I think they belong together. The problem arises when joy loses its source, when celebration detaches from meaning, when praise becomes optional, because praise requires remembering why this day exists at all, remembering that this was not just a beautiful story, but a costly one, remembering that God stepping into the world was not safe for the status quo. That remembering asks something of me. It asks me to slow down when everything tells me to speed up, to be still when everything urges me to consume, to listen when everything shouts, to let Christmas be more than an aesthetic. I don't do this perfectly. I'm still caught in the same rhythms as everyone else, still tempted by convenience, still distracted, still tired. But the older I get, the harder it becomes to ignore the tension. The sense that Christmas is not asking for my participation as much as my attention. And attention is costly. It requires presence. It requires honesty. It requires acknowledging that the story of Christ's birth is not just about something that happened long ago, but about something that continues to happen now. God entering human lives quietly, unexpectedly, without spectacle. I think that's what we fear most. Not losing Christmas, but letting it mean what it actually means. Letting it confront us. Letting it interrupt our carefully managed lives. Because if Christmas truly began as a moment of praise, restoring it won't be convenient. It will require choosing depth over distraction, meaning over momentum, worship over entertainment. And that choice is not abstract. It shows up in how we spend our time, what we center, what we silence, what we allow ourselves to feel when everything goes quiet. I don't have clean answers. I'm still living inside the question, still navigating the pull between what's easy and what's eternal. But I know this much. Every year, Christmas asks me something I can't escape. Am I celebrating what's comfortable or what's transformative? Because those two things rarely coexist. And if Christmas was never meant to be just fun, then maybe the real discomfort isn't losing the version of the season we've grown used to. Maybe the discomfort is realizing what it has always been asking us to become. And I don't know what happens if we finally stop filling the silence long enough to hear that answer. But I have a feeling it wouldn't leave us unchanged.